If you'll recall, Jeremiah prophesied at a time when Babylon was breathing down the neck of a sinful and rebellious Judah. Israel, the northern kingdom, had already been toast for over a century. The last righteous king in David's lineage had come and gone. Even today, only the first sentence of the prophecy has been fulfilled. So now, at least, we know that the branch is Joshua, but he has never literally reigned or prospered or executed judgment and righteousness in the earth. No reigning king has ever been called Yahweh our righteousness. For an unbelieving world, the prophecy is just as outlandish today as it was when Jeremiah wrote it, which is not to say it won't be fulfilled. The same reign was foreseen by Daniel.
I was watching in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man coming with the clouds of heaven. He came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. Then to him was given dominion and glory and the kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom the one which shall not be destroyed. Daniel 7:13-14.
Some very specific requirements are listed here. It's a description no one has ever literally embodied in all its details, yet. 1. This king is a man, a representative of and for the human race. 2. He will arrive with the clouds. I don't believe a grand entrance in a helicopter would count as a fulfillment. 3. Though a man, he will stand in the presence of Yahweh. Something we have seen is impossible to survive unless the man is sinless. 4. He will rule over the entire earth. And 5. That reign will never end. That's a tall order, I'd say. The Antichrist, who will have come closer than any man in history to filling these shoes, only accomplished number 1 and number 4. And achieving number 4 required selling his soul to Satan and murdering billions of people, which would presumably disqualify him for number 3. As usual, the devil's counterfeit is pretty easy to spot if you know what the real thing looks like. John saw it all unfolding before him, both the counterfeit and the real thing. Our timeline, anchored in Revelation, has brought us to the very end of the Great Tribulation. The last battle has been won without a fight. The only weapon deployed was the sword that proceeded out of the mouth of the returning king, the voice of God. As if waving a checkered flag over Yahshua, the winner of the human race, John tells us,
Then a voice came from the throne, saying, Praise our God, all you his servants, and those who revere him, both small and great. And I heard, as it were, the voice of a great multitude, as the sound of many waters, as the sound of mighty thundering, saying, Alleluia! Radiate Yah's light, for the Master God omnipotent reigns. Revelation 19:5-6.
The final coming of the Messiah is a fait accompli at this point. All of creation joins in a shout of celebration. This is surely one of the most significant moments of all time. Its importance ranks right up there with Yahshua's death, burial, resurrection, the birth of the church, the rapture, and the final salvation of Israel, each of which were commemorated in perpetuity with a feast of Yahweh outlined in the law of Moses. We have discussed each of the prior 6 feasts in turn. 4 are past, fulfilled on the very days of their mandated annual celebrations. 2 are yet future as I write these words, but past in our prophetic timeline. There is but one to go, the Feast of Tabernacles. This is how Yahweh described it to Moses.
Speak to the children of Yisrael, saying, The 15th day of this 7th month, this is Tishri, shall be the Feast of Tabernacles for 7 days to Yahweh. On the first day there shall be a set-apart convocation. You shall not do any customary work on it. For 7 days you shall offer an offering made by fire to Yahweh. On the 8th day you shall have a set-apart convocation, and you shall offer an offering made by fire to Yahweh. It is a set-apart assembly, and you shall do no customary work on it.
Thus the Feast of Tabernacles, alternately known as Sukkot, the Feast of Booths, as in Nehemiah 8:14 through 18, and the Feast of Ingathering, as in Exodus 23:16, fell just 5 days after Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, in late September or October. Once again we're tempted to wipe our sweating brow and stammer, "Cutting a little close, aren't we, Father? I mean, you've left only 5 days between the national epiphany in which Israel finally recognizes and accepted its Messiah and the day he's scheduled to take over the government of the planet. And between those 2 days, there's the little matter of Armageddon to take care of." I believe that Yahshua would answer by reminding us that since he no longer has to worry about compromising anybody's ability to choose, because by this time they've already made up their minds, 5 days is plenty of time. He could have finished his program in 5 minutes.
Also on the 15th day of the 7th month, when you have gathered in the fruit of the land, you shall keep the feast of Yahweh for 7 days. On the first day there shall be a Sabbath rest, and on the 8th day a Sabbath rest. And you shall take for yourselves on the first day the fruit of beautiful trees, branches of palm trees, the boughs of leafy trees, and the willows of the brook. And you shall rejoice before Yahweh your God for 7 days. You shall keep it as a feast to Yahweh for 7 days in the year. It shall be a statute forever in your generations. You shall celebrate it in the 7th month. You shall dwell in booths for 7 days. All who are native Israelites shall dwell in booths, that your generations may know that I made the children of Yisrael dwell in booths when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. I am Yahweh your God. So Moses declared to the children of Yisrael the feasts of Yahweh. Leviticus 23:34 through 36, 39 through 44.
Sukkot is a 7-day feast, beginning with a day of Sabbath rest and followed by another. As we saw with the Day of Atonement, the Sabbath rest is a reminder that we can't work for our salvation. It is a gift from Yahweh. It must be accepted, not earned. But on the first day of the feast, designated a special Sabbath day, the people were to take branches, palm fronds, and boughs, and build booths in which to camp out and party throughout the week. That must have driven the rabbis nuts. Building these tabernacles is work, isn't it? No, not in God's eyes. It is preparation for worship, which in itself is an act of worship, and that's not the same thing at all. I hear a faint echo of the story of Mary and Martha, the 2 sisters of Lazarus, whom Yahshua raised from the dead. Martha was busy doing the work of God, while her sister preferred to sit at the feet of Yahshua in humble adoration. Was Martha wrong? There is clearly a proper time for work, as Yahweh demonstrated in his 6 days of creation. But Mary was commended for having chosen to avail herself of the benefits of Yahshua's personal presence while she had the chance. He knew, even if she did not, that he would not always be available for intimate moments like this, not in the flesh anyway. The work would wait. As with the other feasts of Yahweh, Sukkot is a metaphor, a picture of something significant in God's plan. The key to the imagery is the tabernacle, the booth, the pup tent, if you will. Yahweh is telling us that He intends to camp out with us. He is going to physically sojourn for a while in a place that's not His primary domicile, just like these pilgrims in Jerusalem living in their little palm frond huts for a week. This is obviously a picture of the King, Yahshua, condescending to leave the comforts of heaven once again so He can rule upon the earth just as He promised He would. The 7 days of the feast speak, I believe, of the complete 1,000-year period, the millennium, in which He would personally reign upon the earth, the last of the 7 millennia in Yahweh's grand plan for mankind, echoing the 7 days of creation. For what it's worth, there could well have been another realization of the Feast of Tabernacles in the life of Yahshua, a partial fulfillment or dress rehearsal that connected the festival to His first advent as the return of the King does to His second. I'm speaking, of course, of the birth of the Christ child, the real Christmas. We can be reasonably certain that December 25th is not the correct day. That date was all too obviously chosen by Constantine's Roman Church to coincide with the existing pagan winter solstice festival, the Saturnalia. At its heart, the whole point of a late December holiday was to commemorate the, quote, miraculous birth of Tammuz, Semiramis's bastard son, who was to become the prototype for the sun god in all its forms. Scripture gives us few clues as to the time of year in which Yahshua was actually born, but when we're told there were in the same country shepherds living out in the fields keeping watch over their flocks by night, it's fairly certain that the dead of winter is being ruled out. It's too cold in Judea to live out in the fields in December unless you absolutely have to. And these shepherds didn't. They were the honored custodians of the sheep designated for temple sacrifices. So although we aren't specifically told, I submit to you that the Feast of Tabernacles in September or October is the perfect fit for Christ's nativity from the standpoint of both the scriptural record and the mind of God. It marked the day when God came to camp out among men. There is a plethora of historical evidence to demonstrate that Yahshua was born on the Feast of Tabernacles 2 BC. Refer to my appendix on chronology entitled No Man Knows for the details. Moses isn't done instructing us.
You shall observe the Feast of Tabernacles 7 days, when you have gathered from your threshing floor and from your winepress. And you shall rejoice in your feast, you and your son and your daughter, your male servant and your female servant, and the Levite, the stranger and the fatherless, and the widow, who are within your gates. 7 days you shall keep a sacred feast to Yahweh your God, in the place which Yahweh chooses, because Yahweh your God will bless you in all your produce, and in all of the work of your hands, so that you surely rejoice. Deuteronomy 16:13-15.
Here we see why the festival was sometimes called the Feast of Ingathering. Occurring as it did in the fall, it was designed to be associated with the harvest, a factor that makes it indicative of a larger truth. We have seen scores of scriptures pointing to the eventual ingathering of all of Israel to the land of promise, and we haven't seen them all yet. This feast celebrates the fact that under Christ's reign, the ingathering will at last be fully accomplished. But the Jews aren't the only people involved. The strangers, i.e. the Gentiles, the widows and orphans, those without any possessions or inheritance in the land except for Yahweh Himself, pictured here as Levites, in short, everybody who is left will celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles. They'll celebrate or else.